All right, and we're recording. This is Richard Nikoley with Andy Curzon, and we have this, informal series that we call Discussions. And we thought we'd do one just the two of us this time. Usually we have one, sometimes two guests. How you doing, Andy?
I'm doing well, buddy. I'm doing well. I thought I'd put these things on today, which are my new.
You're gonna be.
It's my new gadget. I'm promoting it. It's the Bose 700. It's 350 quid. Actually, it's what's that thing called? Black Friday. So you can get it for probably 250, 300. It's stupidly expensive, but worth every penny. And it's got
all Bose
700. They're cool.
All Bose stuff is expensive. I have one of their little stereo units here in the cabin that I stream wirelessly.
Well, I look at it like one up from Sennheiser. So Sennheiser's great, and Bose is just that little bit better in almost every way. It's more sleek, the sound's better, it lasts longer.
Those are noise canceling. Noise canceling.
Yeah, so it's got 11 levels of noise canceling, and I sit it on about. And I asked someone to talk to me in a reasonable voice last night, and I put it up 5, 6, 7, and when I hit 8, couldn't hear them.
Really?
And I said, can you speak louder? Can you sort of shout at me? And I went up to 9, still about, and when I got up to 10 out of 11, so the second highest one, you can't hear someone shouting. You can't hear a sound of someone shouting, not a sound.
Perfect for airplanes, of course,
Yeah. That's what they're for. These ones are actually these are, designed for that kind of thing.
The drone of the engines and all of that.
So what's been going on in your side then? What's going on?
I wanted to mention that that you delayed this meeting by like 10 minutes because you're trying to pair the Bluetooth, and everybody on the planet has experienced that heartache where you can't get shit to pair, and you try over and over. Bluetooth
off. It's like, well, where's the Bluetooth on?
Yeah,
there's no on.
Right. So anyway, okay. Let's roll. We don't really have any list to cover. I think we have a couple of things. I have a question for you. The other day I tagged you in something or put some sort of comedy bit that Mitchell and you like kind of went off, and then I went off on you, and I'm like, what the fuck? And you're and then you're like, I think it was in private exchange where you're saying you just don't do comedy that much. What's wrong with comedy? I mean, you laugh plenty.
Okay. Do you know what it is? I like comedy. It's just, I feel many different ways about everything I think about. My mind is completely, overcomplicated. So, at school and class, I used to make errors and really simple questions, and I'd get all the hard ones right. That's the best way to describe it. So I will just if someone says, how are you feeling? Or what do you feel about Trump? Or what do you feel like, I can't answer that question without kind of framing it. So, if you say, what do you feel about, I don't know, eating duck? How do you feel about the meal duck? I'll say my brain will think of the 15, 20 ways I feel about duck. And I'll kind of go, oh, do you mean this? Do you mean duck with this? Do you mean that? Or I'll try and categorize it. So when you're talking about comedy, I love watching George Carlin. I love, appreciating situational comedy. But when I go and watch a live bit of sort of construction, for me, it's fake. It's kind of like being gamed. It's kind of like a charmer charming you. You're sort of, I don't like it. I feel like it's sort of constructed, and it's I don't know. I feel like it's almost like watching the Muppets. You're watching the Muppets and you're going, they're not real. They're just. But then on the other side of it, it's a show and it's entertainment. So I think, but then again, psychologically, there's another layer to it. It's sort of, I find people who, again, it's a generalization, but people who like to be funny and like to make jokes are hiding something, and they're showing weakness. Just like I again, not always, but so I think for me, I'm really attentive, or I've got my own biases towards a very specific bit of comedy. Firstly, what mood am I in? Secondly, is the person really trying to make me? I don't know what it is. It's sort of, it really grates on me. So I'm very narrow with my band of comedy.
Yeah. Hey, give me 1 second. I'm going to shut off the heater here because the fan makes noise. I'll be right back.
Mm-hmm. I suppose I should tell a joke while you're away, should I? What do you call Richard when he's drunk? You'll have to ask him next time you speak to him.
What were you saying about me while I was?
I could tell you, but I'll have to kill you, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So back to the comedy thing. So it seems to me like you're kind of making a distinction between comedy skits, which there I agree with you, because very few skits really like make me laugh that much, right? Whereas good stand-up, like George Carlin, of course, Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
Although I wasn't that big Netflix thing he did. Everybody's like, oh wow, he's so, the brave and courageous kind of thing. And I'm like, but it was part funny and part like just like, doesn't really belong on the stage for that medium. It comes down to, what your preference is, but I definitely do get the distinction between, say, comedy skits and a brilliant stand-up routine like Carlin used to be able to do, and the way he could. What's
the name of the guy who did the car one, the really funny car one with the really strange voice? I love that guy. He did the one about having a driving lesson. Really famous.
I don't know. Here's the thing: is that I like comedy, but I'm not a comic. What is it? Typical fanboy,
aficionado,
sycophant. I haven't seen everything, George Carlin ever put on YouTube or someone put on YouTube. For me, it's more like someone will send me something thinking that I might like it. And people are right a good percentage of the time. Usually I do. And sometimes I'm like, it's better than when people send me music, right? People send me music all the time and I'm like, just didn't do it for me,
Well, music's an interesting one, because I think I've got a weird view about music, which is that in some sense you train an understanding or an appreciation for a type of music. So whether it's like rock, whether it's like, if it's rockabilly, I say rockabilly, like 50s kind of Elvis stuff, because it's very specific to me. Rockabilly just, it almost annoys me because it's just,
don't like it at all.
Exactly.
Like it at all.
But it's too corny. But I think in some sense, my frame on it all is you can learn to like a style of music by applying your mind to it. And I think that learning is much easier done between 6 and 30 than it is after that, or 6 and 25. And it's most easily done between about 14 and 18. When you're 14 to 19, 14 to 18, that's when the music you listen to then is the music you're going to love for the rest of your life. And that's pretty well known. So that's the way I look at it.
On the other hand, I love classic blues.
I'm a huge classic blues fan. My favorite musician is Peter Green from Fleetwood Mac.
Well, there's so many, Clapton and all these guys, Buddy Guy.
Buddy Guy's a legend. Yeah. Taj Mahal, if you know him. Yeah.
I'm not sure, but that stuff I like. And of course, if you really understand the history of it, blues is the father of rock and roll.
Rap, and rock and roll. It's the father of many things.
Yeah. So. Okay, comedy. So what else? Your turn to pop out a question for discussion.
Okay, well, I sung live last night. I know it sounds a bit odd. I don't have any musical background. I've played maybe 100 hours of guitar in my life, maybe 50 hours of piano, nothing else really. And my friend flew from Costa Rica for several private reasons, and he's staying with my friend Jim in Wimbledon down the road. And Jim said to me, we're going to play a live set. We've been practicing a song. Do you want to come down? And I said, yeah. So I went to his house. We're going to go to Kingston, which is half an hour away. And he said, well, we'll meet Sebastian, the Costa Rican man. We'll meet him there. So I went round and we said, we've got about half an hour. And he said, why don't you come and do a song with me? We'll get 3 songs. I'll do 2 with him, or I'll do 1 with him, 1 on my own, and then 1 with you. And I sort of went, and the way my mind is, he knows it, because the way my mind is sort of like boundlessly open. So like, it's the kind of thing I just go yes to. I don't know how to sing. I've never sung before. I've got no idea. And the idea of singing in front of people that's supposed to be scary and daunting for me is just exciting. So anyway, you can see it on my Facebook. It's terrible. But the first minute is just, It's awful. But then after about a minute and a half, it's actually not too bad. And anyway, the experience for me was pretty.
I'll have to go past a minute then.
Oh yeah, no. Oh no, exactly. That's what people do. The problem is, it's at about 1:30 or so.
Well, I saw you. You're in your phone, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing in his phone? But
okay,
that was the lyrics, right?
You've got it. Okay, I didn't know the song. It was a song by Frank Ocean called Self Control. I had 10 minutes to prepare, and by 10 I don't mean an hour. I don't mean 10 hours. I mean 10 minutes. We sat down. He played it, and I just sat there with my phone in his house, in his front room, and just sort of tried to put it together. Listened to him. I don't know what the hell was. I was just basically making it up as I went along, and I thought I'd whistle, and you can hear me whistling at the end. It just didn't work. So we did it live. I started whistling for about 5 seconds, and then I stopped because it was crap. My whistling was good, but it didn't work with the tune. And then I just got really laddered. I just had loads of Guinnesses, and and I played poker with Jim, my friend. I like to teach people poker. So we were both on the table, and we were playing a group of people who are what's called calling stations. So whatever you raise by in this game of poker, all these people, they weren't re-raising or folding, they were just calling. And there's a very specific way to play a calling station, which is you play very tight. I'm not going to go too deep, but you fold all the shit hands. You play aces, kings, you play certain hands. And I just tapped him on the shoulder. I said, play tight. And I was kind of I ended up being the deal. I was dealing the cards, and I just kind of gave him little nudges. It was not cheating. It was just advice.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what was going on. Anyway, he won because of that. And just as he had won, we went on stage, and so he did a song with me, then he did a song on his own, and then Sebastian, who came all the way from Costa Rica, they said, sorry, you're only allowed 2 songs. And so they said, you can't play. And he was just like, what? And luckily we got him on later. And so I'm a little bit hungover today, but I think I've told you already, but I've got this little puppy dog to send me through. And the reason why I say it so comfortably is because I don't really drink that much. So it's kind of,
I'll be part.
I never drink from the bottle either. It's something I'd never do.
It's noon here. Oh wow, yeah, it's noon here on the West Coast. It's America's Thanksgiving Day. I am home alone, and my parents the family is down at my brother's place in Tehachapi, which is about a 5-hour drive, and I just didn't see the point in driving all the way down there for a day and driving back up here, 10 hours total on the road. And
do you guys have turkey? Do you guys do the turkey thing, or is it?
Our typical deal is it's always turkey for Thanksgiving dinner. And my mom makes an awesome giblet gravy for the mashed potatoes.
Is that where you got your cooking love from your mom, or was it just from the net?
Yeah.
How did your cooking come about? Because you're more of a chef.
This is informal, so let me show you something.
Okay.
Wait, it's packed away. I don't know where it is. So anyway, some years ago, my mom for Christmas gifted myself and my 3 brothers each her own cookbook, which is a binder that thick with every damn recipe that we grew up with as kids. Some added in there from the grandmothers, a great grandmother even, and some other folks. So whenever
I'm sorry, I'm gonna straight up cut you up here just because it'll exit my mind. But I watched a video by Jonathan Haidt, which actually Brandon Hayes put on Facebook, and it reminded me of what you just said, which is slightly off piece, but you'll see what I mean. Jonathan Haidt's a social psychologist, and he was speaking to a group in America of leading educators. So the principal of Harvard, all of these universities and top schools throughout America, about 3,000 people in a room listening to Jonathan Haidt speak. Anyway, so I was watching it, and he does a usual spiel of like, this is good, this is bad, this, social media is bad for you, all of these things like this. And he made a point which was really interesting to me. He said, have a consider of people who grew up in, let's say, the 30s and 40s, or even up to, let's say, the 60s and even 70s, and split what they listened to, as in the input they had to learn from, into 3 categories. It's arbitrary, but there's a point to it. So how much of what they read and input is from over 100 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
How much is from between 5 years and 100 years ago? Mm-hmm. And then how much is within the last 5 years, or even the last few minutes? And you can see what I'm saying. The trend is obviously, we don't read Locke anymore. I don't know anyone under 20 who reads Locke or who reads, the classics, unless they have to at school or they're extremely, intellectual. And I thought this is a really interesting thing. Like when you're talking about your cooking and your grandmother's, that's how it linked to it. It's kind of a tradition, I find tradition, maybe we'll talk about tradition. I find tradition such an interesting thing because a lot of people on Facebook are like, pro-tradition, pro-tradition, pro-tradition. And the other people are, hey, do you remember when you said about comedy for me? You said, what's your problem with the comedy? I said, no, I've got 100 problems with it and 100 positives about it. Yeah. And it's just which ones I link into. In the same way with tradition, for me, tradition is a shortcut for, tradition is a shortcut and it's a set of actions, or it's a pattern for a situation, and some of those you could say are out of date. So let's say I sneeze and you say bless you. I know it's fun and everything, but I find it just ridiculous.
It annoys the shit out of me.
It's a completely out of date tradition, but it's also kind of people like it. And so tradition for me, for example, your cooking, that's probably your family are going to have a much higher level of cooking, it depends how you measure it, because of that tradition.
Yeah, and there's the holiday traditions. Thanksgiving and Christmas are the big ones.
Yeah.
And so Thanksgiving is always the turkey. Christmas is always the prime rib with the pudding.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I make good Yorkshire pudding. So does one of my brothers. Yeah. They're all popped out of the things, and it's just the coolest thing ever, man. So, and we do a very low and slow method of cooking a prime rib. So it's like basically you want it at about 130 internal. So we're cooking it basically just maybe 175 to bring it up to that temperature. So basically all day long. So it's like pink from edge to edge, not one of these things where it's that much gray on the outside and then you've got your nice.
I've got a really important job at Christmas, which I've had since I was about 6, and I don't know how they would do it without me. It's I peel the carrots.
You do.
Sometimes I chop the carrots as well.
Wow.
And it's taken me years to get really good at it, but now I feel that I'm confident with it. I think I can maybe. I said to them, like, why don't I branch out and try something else? And they said, stick to what you know.
Stick
and
to
I think
what
that's
you know.
fair enough.
Yeah. Don't even try it with the potatoes.
But I tell you what, I can do carrots like no one I know. Honestly,
yeah.
I think it's a talent, actually. I think it's a genetic talent. But yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't go down to. So I'm home alone for a holiday, and my parents are like, "Oh, come down. You don't want to be home alone." Blah 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 blah. I'm like, "Mom, remember when I was lived in Japan for 5 years and then France for 2 years, and I missed all of those holidays? Normally, I was home alone because I'm not one. I don't. For me, Thanksgiving and Christmas is family, right? I don't go to some friends. Oh, come and have Thanksgiving with us. It's just going to be a bummer for me. I'd rather be at home and watch a movie. Something like So.
Well, have you ever invited a girlfriend to Christmas? I mean, I suppose did your wife come with your parents when your ex?
Oh yeah. So either it was half and half. So
your former wife. I apologize.
We would go down to her family, because they do essentially the same thing. Although I think they do turkey for Christmas as well. But half the time we do Thanksgiving at one place and then, but it's always family. Always. It's just, for me, that's essential. I don't want to sit around and shoot the shit with people who are not my family during those familial special events, So
what did you do? I've never asked you. What were you like at let's say last 2 years of school, or 16, 17? Did you leave school at 16 or 18?
18 for high school, and then
what were you like? What was Richard Nikoley like? Last 2 years of school. Were you a jock? Were you a nerd? Were you a bit of both? Bit of different? What were you like?
Well, I was in a small private school. My graduating class for high school was I don't know what you call it in the UK, but my graduating class in in high school was 2. I was in the top 50%. You know.
I don't understand how that works. Explain.
Well, in other words, you know, your grade point average. So in other words, mine was higher than his. It was
But why were there only 2 of you? Why were there only
because it
2?
was a very small school. It was a very small
Well,
school.
I mean, that's an incredibly small school. 2
Yeah,
people.
it was a church-based, you know, private school, about maybe 100 total students, and we're talking first grade to 12th grade, right?
Well, do
So
you know how many people were in my year? I think there were 280. Oh, what 200? Actually, quite a few people at Eton in my year died. I'll tell you a succession of stories. I won't remember them all, but there was a guy called Peter Monas, OS, he got an Opperton scholarship, so kind of a medium scholarship. And after our first Christmas or Easter holidays, I don't remember, we were told he had a jet ski accident and died.
wow,
And then someone in my maths class called Tejas Patel, he had a transplant, a kidney transplant. That was it a liver? Sorry, it must be liver or kidney, whichever one you do. I can't remember right now, unfortunately. And he died. And then we had a guy called Slippers, who was called Louis Oppenheim. He died. I mean, anyway, for some
wow.
curious reason, quite a lot of our year just kept randomly dying for things. It's sad and strange.
That's an experience I haven't had much of. In fact, I had you know, I've never had I had I haven't had friends die, you know. There's a past girlfriend when I lived in France, who died young, some sort of congenital heart deal. She died at like 40. But that's it. And in terms of family, I've been very lucky there. I had 4 grandparents and a great grandmother growing up. All of them lived lived well into their 80s, natural causes sorts of deaths.
I've got the opposite. So I had, well, close to the opposite. I had one grandparent. My grandfather died in 2000, and he was Lord Curzon. So it was a very big deal, sort of aristocratically, you know, and all that.
Yeah.
But my grandmother was called the Belgian Nightingale. She was an opera singer, and she met my grandfather in the war. She was singing in front of the forces, and my grandfather said, "I'm going to marry that woman," and he did, and he brought her back to England to his, you know, to Kedleston, to our estate in Derbyshire, and she was so unhappy with the British aristocratic life of the, you know, stiff upper lips, you know, snooty, kind of detached, emotionless, English, you know, countryside life, that she turned to drink, and she became an alcoholic, unfortunately. And I think when my father was 8, she died of it.
Wow.
And so when I grew up with, my mother's parents died before I was born. And so I grew up with just a grandfather, and my family have done the opposite. They've all died in their 60s and 70s. There's a couple in the 80s, but my family died really early. So there we go.
That's unfortunate. Well,
I don't mind. I'm happy to have a good 60, 70 years than a shit 90, you know. That's where I look at it.
My parents right now, my dad is he'll be 82 in January. My mom's will be 78 in April, and they still travel all over and you know, in the big land yacht, you know, the big pickup and the fifth wheel, all over the country. They spend 5-6 months on the road every year, right? So very active. My dad still works online too. He can work when he's on the road. He does estimating for finishes, but the big stuff, like the big skyscrapers and shit like that, he's sought after. He's sought after because he's this German guy who never makes an error, you know.
Okay, a meticulous
Pencil
guy.
on the graph paper sort of guy, you know.
Well, you know, you've got that somewhere in you, whether or not you show it. It's somewhere in there, you know, somewhere in the spools of your genes is this meticulous guy.
Yeah,
know?
Yeah. Well, I have to care a lot about it, right?
Yeah.
But I am to large extent a wing it sort of guy and a procrastinator. I have this idea called the virtue of procrastination. I may have talked about it before, but
no, go for it.
But the idea is that, so I'm also a guy that has a million different ideas. You know, I can have 10 ideas a day, right? So by necessity, you can't execute on everything. So, you know, you can jot them down, or for me, I just like file them away in my head, and I chew on them over time. So rather than say, oh, I got this great idea, and then you go like zoom, 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 and you do this, and you spend time and money and effort here, and it fails, right? So I'd rather have 10 ideas, chew on all of them and whittle them down over time to one or two. Then by the time I do execute, could be months later, could be a year later, right? By the time I actually spend money on it, you know, and the kind of focused effort where you have to like now develop it, right? The execution is going to be way,
it's like the iceberg, isn't it? It's the iceberg. I think it's an interesting thing.
By the time you execute with a way better probability of success, right? So that's what I call the virtue of procrastination. I actually gave a talk at a business conference on that one time, you know.
Well, what I had was, I always compare myself to my ex-girlfriend on this measure, which is I'm similar to you. I think probably even more so along that scale, in my opinion, which is I have just obscene amounts of ideas. I mean, good, bad, and indifferent, whatever, you know, ideas and thoughts and plans. And she has very few. And mine's not better, hers is not better. They're different tactics, but she would execute them very, very meticulously and very well, but there'd be very few of them. And I would be, you know, having dinner with her, talking about this wild idea of, you know, whatever it may be, and link it to another idea and link it to another. And she'd kind of get excited about it in the earlier days, and then it would never come to pass. And I'd say, listen, I don't execute everything I think, because part of the process of whittling, what's the word? It is whittling, but it's winnowing. Part of the process of winnowing,
you know, filtering down, you know.
Yeah, and some people work from lots down, and some people have to have that one idea. It's not quite open and closed-mindedness, but I think creativity and openness are more linked and correlated with the way we think than the way my ex did.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Of course, you know, whenever you make these generalizations about like men and women, for example, you know, you've got the curves, right? But there's always that intersection there where they, you know, overlap, where both. But I think in general, that's why, you know, the workforce in general is the way it is, where you know, there are certain jobs and professions that women tend to seek, and there are those that men tend to seek, right? And so it must be also that the way we think about these things in terms of, okay, what job do I want? Or in terms of, you know, am I going to be an entrepreneur? Am I going to, you know, start some sort of business, some sort of endeavor, right? Create something like that.
Well, I think a lot about, I've got a lot of thoughts about entrepreneurship generally. Not so, you know, I could talk about myself, everyone talk about myself and what I've done and not done, but generally, I think more, this is such a controversial statement, but I think more people have a scope to be entrepreneurial within their own bounds. Very Yasuhiko about people's genius, if you remember that conversation, which we can go into. I think, but it's a lot about
starts off as genius.
And see, that is a really, it's something that someone like Kurt would balk at. And it doesn't mean that everyone has an IQ of 100 and whatever silly number. It doesn't mean that everyone is Leonardo da Vinci. It means that if you find the spot, if you were to take 10 million things that you, Richard, do and everyone else does, and you were to measure them, you're going to be in the top 0.0000001% in about 3 of them or 6 of them or 10 of them. You just will. And if you find those things or you create those things, you're going to succeed. And the idea of, only a few people can succeed, and it's the wrong model as far as I'm concerned. It's about for me, it's about being like really, really harsh on yourself and just saying, you know, like singing. I did that singing last night, as everyone can see on Facebook, and I'm not going to be a singer. I don't care if I sing 4 hours a day for 10 years. I'm just not a good singer. So, but I'm not a terrible singer. So that's not something I'm going to endeavor to try and make money from.
Right. Exactly. And so it must be in a kind of a, you know, obvious sense through the you know, long evolution of humans that we're here. And so it must be that people in general evolved to be competent at least a
Okay.
few things, right?
Let me ask you something about evolution, because I've got a big problem with evolution. Not with Darwin's theory and not with evolution itself. I'm not a
So
skeptic. I'm not some sort of bonkers person. But I'll
are
tell
you
you what it
talking
is. It's
biological evolution or social evolution?
both. I'm talking about the concept of evolution, the concept of changing over time through. Well, no, the concept of evolution as Darwin puts it. I'm not going to paraphrase how he did it. Read his book, as you probably have. And but what I'm saying is, I found that it's the zeitgeist of the moment. So sort of like, zeitgeist of the last 20, 30 years, and I'll tell you my problem with it. It's not a problem with the theory. It's not a problem with the science behind it. It's a problem with the application. It's what I call the 4-step gap, which is people will, they will wishfully think they want the world away. So they want the world a certain way. So someone who's inculcated by feminism or by this sort of San Francisco vibe, they'll say, oh, there's no difference between men and women, or there's negligible differences, and that's their bias and that's their mistake, in my opinion. But what they'll do is they'll say, they'll find a way of, if they so wish, of forging an evolutionary story to fit that.
Oh yeah.
And it's not just them. It's you, it's me, it's Kurt, it's John Doe, it's Jane Doe. What we do, it's become this sort of, oh well, of course, because cavemen did this, and you get, and it's always, oh well, of course, back in the day we did this, and it's like,
Yeah.
I think it's so weak.
I'll tell you what, I just had this, well, it wasn't a discussion, but there's a guy out there named Stefan Guillenet, who's
okay. I don't know. Yeah, go on.
He was very well known back in the paleo,
Okay.
fad. He's a PhD. He's an obesity researcher and so on and so forth. And he makes this point all the time that so many of these people out in the paleosphere, and now it's ketogenic diets and so on like that. This is exactly what they do. It's like, oh, here's what basically, it's like, here's what I like to eat. And here's what works for me. Right. So
yeah.
That's what cavemen ate. So that's essentially what you're saying. Right. And so I remarked, I've had a little Twitter exchange with him the other day. I said exactly right. And I said, basically humans ate everything that was edible depending on geography and season, right?
And they ate things that weren't edible, and then they died, and then people went, "Oh, I'm not going to eat that."
A lot of testing went on. This is just obvious. There was no such thing as like dietary restrictions or anything like that, and so people ate because we're exploiters of the environment, and that's why we can. I used to say, humans are unique in that they populate virtually every every niche and corner of the globe, from sea level to what's the highest. The highest village is like in Peru. They live at 16,000 feet. That's a high. So
they're not any in the like in the around, let's say, the Himalayan area.
Not at 16,000. Not permanently, right? But this is a permanent. It's a gold mining town, and it's like at 16,000 something. It's Pico, Peru, or something like that in the Andes. So.
Can I tell you a story that's completely off piste?
Yeah.
So, it's a strange one, but I used to share a flat with some some Brazilians, but they spoke Portuguese. And this is when I was much young. This is sort of 15 years ago when I was young, and I used to smoke a bit of weed. Anyway, I got this strain of weed called Hawaiian Snow, and Hawaiian Snow is very, very, very tall, thin plant, and it produces very little amount, but it's extremely strong. I think it's the best in the world. And it's extremely what's called sativa. So it's like having a line of cocaine. It's not going to make you sleep. It's going to make you talk. Yeah. Anyway, so this guy called, let me try and remember his name, Lucas. He used to say, "Hey, Andy, you want to watch a move?" And meaning a movie. And he was just like, hey. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to Brasilia," which is in the center of Brazil. It's nowhere near the coast. And there's a river going through the edge of it. I don't know the details of it. And he said, I live by the river. He said, "Can you get me some seeds?" And he asked me for some seeds. And the only seeds I had at that age were these Hawaiian Snow seeds, which are the ones the reason why I had them is I couldn't grow them because if I tried to grow them, they would just become 15 feet up in the air, and they would produce very little. Anyway, this is going somewhere. So I gave him the seeds. I gave him 20 seeds of Hawaiian Snow back in 2000, and God knows, very near 2000. And he went away and he planted them along the river. He planted all 20 of them along the river near where he was. And, time passed. He came back 2 years later and he said, Andy, he contacted me and he said, they've gone completely mad. And now there are this is years later, there's not an epidemic, but this plant has gone absolutely wild. It's the most prestigious, this is the most prodigious strain of, it's basically looked at as a weed and a problem.
Yeah, they are.
And on the same side. Anyway, I just found that absolutely brilliant. The way I gave him this thing. He planted it in Brazil, and now it's become this huge. I caused that, and I'm very proud of it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So if you're there, you go. Right, you get butterfly effect or something like that. Right?
Exactly that. But it wasn't 16,000 feet, unfortunately.
Yeah, not 16,000 feet, but sea level to 16,000 feet, and every place in between, from Arctic Circle to from Antarctic Circle. So this is an extremely, and there are all sorts of different foodstuffs, both plant and animal and marine, and freshwater, within all these environments, and to think that people would say, oh, that's too many carbohydrates for this plant. The Hadza in Africa, during the peak season, 80% of their calories come from honey, wild honey. Right?
Yeah, and obviously the Inuit or Eskimos, their diet's just like seals and like fish.
That's another thing that's I did a whole series on Free the Animal, about 17 posts about all the fallacies about.
Oh, is that a fallacy?
Inuit. Well, they do all sorts of things to get carbohydrate, right? And this idea that they eat so much fat. Well, I had a collaborator when we did this series, there's all this bullshit out there, like fat, for an example, seal fat, right? So they ate so much fat. Bullshit. They used do you know how cold and dark an Arctic winter is? You know what their fat was primarily. 24
hours of dark.
You know what their fat was primarily used for, heat and light inside those enclosures, igloos, whatever they are. Also, fresh kills have significant amount of not so much glycogen, which is a carbohydrate, in the muscle meat, but in the livers, quite a bit of glycogen. So there's carbohydrate there. Now, here's the other thing. Why do they call the whale, what you eat from the whale, blubber instead of fat? Well, because it's not pure fat. It has significant carbohydrate, like a narwhal, for these deep dives that they do for, like, I don't know if they can eat. I mean, they can.
Well, a carbohydrate's just a complex sugar, isn't it? That's what carbohydrate is.
Yeah. Well, carbohydrate is a general term for any kind of sugar, right? So the whale blubber has a significant amount of carbohydrate in it. Upwards of 30% of calories for like a narwhal whale, right? They do these things like they catch these birds, put them in a sack and ferment them, carbohydrates, right? In the regions like northern Canada and stuff like that, they have significant plant matter that they eat. So there's so much bullshit about the Inuits, and they only eat protein and fat, no carbohydrates.
Well,
right?
So I just fell into the trap. I quite like doing that. I think most people feel really uncomfortable when they say something that's bollocks, but I quite like it. I just said something that was actually bollocks, and you schooled me. You schooled me on it. It's fine. I'm glad about that. I had something else to mind. Oh yeah, referring slightly back to height. That talk I told you about that he did to the American educators. He said, talking about, let's do it with the diet thing. He was saying it's all over the news at the moment, you know, microdosing with acid or microdosing with peanuts. He was talking about peanut allergies and how
That
when
was the
you know the story.
that was the Netflix thing I turned you on to called Rotten, right? So there's two seasons, right? Yeah. Well, here's the thing: is I knew about that peanut allergy thing going back to like 2014 or so. Some folks in Australia did this where they prescribed a probiotic, leading to, because they thought the cause of the allergy was.
See there for a second, Richard.
Was somewhere in the gut, so they prescribed a probiotic. So in other words, seed the gut with the certain bacteria, and then microdose. You know, I mean, some people, the peanut allergy is so bad that just a little of the oil will send them into anaphylactic shock, right? So they achieved this with most subjects, where they first work on the gut, the resident bacteria in the gut, and then start giving them bits of peanuts to where they can, you know, eat a little baggie every day, and this protects them from the dangers of having it. Hey, let me take a quick intermission and pause the recording. Are
you gonna leave? Because I can have a chat if you're gonna walk away.
Okay, go ahead. I'll be right back.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so guys and girls, take that idea of microdosing in order to prevent allergies or prevent issues, and take it to everything that you do. So say you want to, I don't know, you have a problem with social interaction. What do you want to do? Do you want to avoid social interaction and talk about how important it is to be abstract? And, you know, let's say you've got an ultra male brain. Do you want to sell the idea that the male brain is the right, correct, logical thing and women are idiots? Or do you want to see some value in completely the opposite side? And do you want to expose yourself, in this case, to being the ultra male brain? Do you want to expose yourself to women, to a very, very the female brain side of women, let's say? Or do you want to avoid them and keep that distance? If you're, I don't know, same with everything. If you're good at languages but you're not very good at mathematics, do you want to avoid mathematics, or do you want to microdose? And so I apply. I don't know whether it's right or wrong. I test it, and it comes and it happens to pass. It's a good thing. Sorry, Richard. I was just saying that I apply that microdosing.
Back anyway. I have to produce it. So
I was just saying you can apply that microdosing to almost anything you do. And I always talk about tropoclastics, which is basically like training habits, changing your training habits. And for me, if I feel like I'm not good at something, or I've got a weakness, so I'm a terrible singer, as I've said 3 times, what did I do? I went and sung in front of a crowd, and I just dealt with it. I'm not saying it's heroic. I'm saying that bravery, or that attempted bravery, it's only going to help me. It's only going to expand me. So, and the way I look at that, I'm just talking about, I suppose, learning about yourself and how to improve, I look at it as depth training and breadth training. Very simple model, which is depth training would be, you know, train at what you're good at, basically what you're good at and what you're interested at will overlap. And that's the kind of 2 main things. It's like IQ and conscientiousness for success. You know, what you're good at and what you're interested in, or they're the things that you'll excel at very quickly. But then you look at the things that sorry, one second. Then you'll look at the things that you're really not interested in. Think, I'm really, really not interested in women's nail varnish. So what did I do? I bought a book on women's products and stuff. I know it sounds absolutely bonkers, and I read it and I thought, I'm going to read this with absolute interest. Luckily, I'm very open-minded, and I thought, what else do I not know about this? What sport do I know? I really don't like swimming. Okay, I'm going to go and do that. So that's breadth training. And I think at some stage, I've got no idea there's no answer as to how much to do of each. But I think the only way to do it is to challenge yourself. And in almost all of this, let's call it breadth training, in almost all of this, I'm going to take myself out of my comfort zone and do this weird thing at the moment, then it changes you. So for example, I'm going to learn how to fly a plane soon. And I'm going to learn how to fly a plane possibly through the RAF. So, and it's a scholarship program. I'm 33 years old. I should be doing this at 18 or not. I'm going to just to finish. And like, what a weird thing to do. Almost everyone, my sister, my father, my friends, they're like, what are you doing? You've got so much going on. Like, do you understand how hard this is going to be, or how out of your comfort zone it's going to be? And I'm just smiling there, just going, you guys have got no idea. You've got absolutely no idea of how I think about it. Anyway, carry on.
You asked me earlier about how I was like last couple years in high school. So I was in sports and stuff. I played on a couple, basically what you call football, what we call soccer, and also baseball. But I always wanted to do like these more extreme sort of, things. So like when I was in college, I did skydiving, I even had a chute failure, had to come down on a reserve. My third jump, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's got to scare the shit out of you.
And then I've done bungee jumping, where you, with the, lines attached to your feet.
Yeah. So I used to get suspended a lot from school when I was a kid, and when I used to get suspended, my dad would take me out to do so. The first time I got suspended, I won't go into why, but well, maybe I will. He took me go-karting. So my dad is brilliant. And the next time I got suspended, because they're always for ridiculous things, because Eton's just insane. He took me. I did a bungee jump off Chelsea. I think it was at Chelsea Bridge or somewhere, one of the bridges and it became a habit. So when I got suspended from school, we would go and do an adventure.
Yeah.
And it's something that we look back at fondly. And yeah.
And then I took up hang gliding, which it's a wing, you're suspended from it, and you steer and control speed with a control bar, weight shift, right? The way it's constructed, shifting your weight, kind of like a shopping cart, push pull sort of thing. And then speed is in and out. So what it does.
Wait, tell me one more time. Sorry, explain that again.
So the wing is made of, aluminum tube. They're very advanced now. I mean, the glide ratio is like upwards of 17, 18 to 1. So so in still air, for every foot you sink on glide, you will go forward 17 or 18 feet, right? And then of course there's thermal activities, and there's also mechanical stuff. Like you'll see, I think up there in there's a lot of places like in Scotland and stuff where the onshore flow against the cliff, you see seagulls, they don't even flap their wings. Well, you can do that in a hang glider. You can float around for hours, right? Just same way the birds do it. And so I took that up and became quite active in it for a good number of years. I've been as high as like 12,000 feet, launching from 4,000 feet above sea level on a mountain, and then thermal activity all the way up to 12,000 feet. I have friends that have gone over 20,000 feet in them, over 100 miles. The record for a hang glider flight, a single flight, is now over 400 miles. So it's pretty extreme. And from that, I took up a little bit of flying sailplanes, and then power planes. So it's kind of why I got into this. I wanted to recommend to you that when you do learn on a tail dragger. That will make you a much better pilot rather than the trike configuration. I learned on a Citabria, which is a
You're speaking a completely different language, but I'll look it up. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. I can shoot you some links, but definitely learn on a tail dragger is where there's the two wheels under the wing, and then the one on the back of the wing. So it's like this rather than the trike, like your average, Cessna has the front wheel and then the front wheel and then the two wheels. The tail dragger it's maddening because it is so difficult when you first start, because as soon as that tail comes off the ground, it's wanting to go like this all over the place, right? Whereas in a trike, it's stable, straight down the runway until the point where you have the airspeed to lift off and you just go like that. Not so in a tail dragger. So very, very challenging to learn, but once you got it, it's like riding a bike. In fact, once you've got it, your instructor will try to screw you up, because as soon as the tail comes off, he'll be punching on the rudder pedals to make you go like this, and you got to recover and keep it straight. So tail dragger training will make you a far better stick and rudder pilot, right? Yeah. So anyway, let's move on.
I did something called the Seebeck Test. So it's called a computer-based aptitude test for the RAF, and I got the second highest score that they've ever got.
Good.
I don't know exactly what this is. I think it's out of 180, and I got 170. Anyway, they were very happy, and I asked them. I said, "Who got the top?" And yeah, they thought I was a bit arrogant, but anyway, I dealt with that. It's so the Seebeck test is basically an advanced IQ test, but a lot of it is actually, as well as that, you've got this, you've got the stick and you're guiding something. It's on a computer. You're guiding something through, and they say at 88 seconds, avoid the yellow triangle, and then at 62, and you've got to hold something in your head and then do something. Hold something in your head, do something. And I think I got full marks on that pretty much the whole way through. And it's just about having
hand-eye coordination. I would imagine that many of these like gamers, are just off the scale with it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, for something like that, it's a few things at once. You've got to be able to hold lots of information in your head. You've got to be able to control yourself, and you've got to be calm. Because as soon as you flap, if you make a mistake, a lot of people, when they make a mistake, their blood pressure rises and they start freaking out, and their brain, obviously, the clarity of their thoughts decreases. And so I think in some sense, the fact I didn't make mistakes through the middle session, so easy, everyone gets right. Middle, you filter out the shit people, and then hard, you filter out the average people. Yeah. So the fact that I somehow managed to get to the hard parts without making a mistake, I think I didn't have that click of damn, I've made a mistake, and freak out. And I think it folded onto the next thing, and then just the scores rose up.
So how would you get to do this with the Royal Air Force? Is it some sort of reserve training, sort of reservist?
You go to a place called Cranwell, and they have 6,000 applicants. It's a scholarship program for having a 2-year course where you learn to fly a helicopter, and then you learn to. It's much more. I couldn't explain it to you in a sentence, but you learn to fly a helicopter first. Then you've got mid-size, you've got small to mid-sized planes, and then you've got things like the Tornado. It's an English plane, or it's a UK plane, I think. Yeah. And the Tornadoes are reserved for the Top Gun, as it were, the very top of the top. And at the moment, I'm on the last stage. So I started a year ago, and I've got from 6,000 down to 2,000, 2,000 down to I'm not going to get the numbers exactly right. I think it's 500 down to 100, and now I'm on the last 15 people, and they've got 2 spaces left. And on December the 11th, that's why I haven't smoked in 2 weeks. So on December the 11th, I have my final batch of tests where they pick two people, and they reserve a right to only pick one or to pick none. Obviously, 2's the maximum. And yeah, I'm down to the last 15. And what they do is they aggregate your scores. So they've got your Seebeck test, which I've just explained. They've got your ability to lead. Now, this is the thing about leading, is I had a bit of an edge with the leading, because what people who go into leadership challenges do is they think, there's a group of 10 people, and they say, God, get your team across the river using these 3 items, or whatever the silly thing is. And what most people think is, when they are made the leader, they have to sort of either order people about, or they have to, they basically go about it the wrong way. What you need to do is make a plan, make a second plan often, and then you need to delegate. You don't order everyone to do every one thing. You have to delegate. If you've got a team of 10 people, you have to say, you're in charge of this here, given these bounds. I want this general plan. And the second thing is, when you're not leading, they actually watch you when you're not leading. So the people they're not going to select, or the people they're going to score low, are the people who screw with their leader. So obviously, think of a stupid person, right? A stupid person will go and thinking, okay, I want to look good here. So in looking good, I need to make sure that when everyone else is leading, they look bad. So I'm going to not follow their orders. So, the stupid person, or the person who does badly will receive the order or the delegation from the leader at the time saying, do this particular task, and they will screw with them all the time. So actually, to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. And that's probably one of the reasons why I did well. I think I did well in that test. I actually haven't got my results from that test. I passed with flying colors, where they haven't given me a score. And then, so it's Seebeck test, leadership test. They give you a medical, they check your liver, your heart, your teeth, usual story, medical history. What else is it broken down into? You've got to know about the history of the RAF, the place that I've got. Give me a sec. I'm reading this at the moment. which actually my dad bought for me. Let me have a look. So
What's it called?
let's have a look. It's called The Royal Air Force, The History of the Royal Air Force by John Buckley and Paul Beaver. And my father bought it for me. So it says, Andrew, congratulations. Congratulations on such a great CBAT exam result for the RAF.
Cool.
Love, Pa.
Cool.
So yeah, so I'm reading that one.
I'll give you. Let me shoot out one. I've read tons of aviation books over the years, but there's one that's a particular favorite of mine, written by, everybody's heard of a Learjet, the first like private business jet, and the guy Bill Lear Sr. Put that all together. His son was also involved with the company and was a pilot and racer and all this stuff. So the book is by him. What's it called? It's called Fly Fast, Sin Boldly. Best book on aviation. It's a page.
Link it below. You've got to link it to the to this thing, and I'm going to read it.
Yeah, it's not in print anymore. It's an old book, so you have to find it used. But that's pretty damn easy to do, I find nowadays, to get hold of books. There's a lot of people who make a business out of that. Yeah.
Well, it's a whole world for me in November 2018. So it was about 12 months ago, a few weeks more than 12 months ago. I entered this world of, let's call it the aviatory world or whatever you call it. And I learned about, the bases, the RAF bases and the history and the this and the weird thing is, it's sort of like everything, isn't it? It's like you're in a duck out of water and you go into this world, and as you grow from the bottom up, everything else links. And when you start talking about quite complicated topics, they become so easy to learn and you interlink. And I think I'm at a point now, I'm very middling. So I'm definitely, if you get some if we had someone, an aviator online, he would talk past 80% of the audience, and I'd be with him. And then there'd be a point at which I go, okay, slow down. Yeah. Like you did with your gliding, and you're explaining with the shapes, and I was like, okay, I need to slow down there. Yeah. But it's definitely something I've got an interest in. I love technical gadgets. I'm very coordinated. I think my biggest strength in life possibly is coordination, balance. Like I was a martial artist, so in percentage terms compared to everyone else, I think my best ability is coordination. I think flying a plane is it's being calm, being able to do lots of things at once in your head. It's very, very procedural. You've got a lot of procedures to and it's very ordered. You can't do the order 1 to 7. You can't go 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 2. You've got to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so I'm conjecturing at some point, because I have a huge interest in planes and an interest in navigation personally, we won't go into that if I get this scholarship, that I will be able to spend 2 years learning helicopter, mid-level, and then tornado. I don't know the ins and outs. It depends on a lot of permutations. Then I come out approximately my 36th birthday, buy myself a plane or figure out some sort of that, get a private license, and I can fly my friends around the world.
That's cool. Yeah.
I can come and pick you up. I can come and pick you up and fly you to Europe. And I'm not kidding you.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, that's a dream anyway. So I'm a long way back from that.
I find that people that with this kind of mindset for this kind of stuff, I really love flying hang gliders even more than power, because it's so challenging, and unless you're doing unless you're flying, from a mountain, and that you're not going to get out of glide from the LZ landing zone, right? So where you're going to land, right? But if you go cross country, you don't know where you're going to land, and so you have to. There's a lot to that to stay within glide of something that's suitable for landing out, as we call it. And
how do you know all this stuff, if you don't mind me asking? You've got very good terminology. You're in the Navy. You weren't in the Air Force. What's going on?
Well, no, I took up hang gliders in about 95. I haven't had a flight in a few years now. I still have all my equipment, right? But I have a few hundred hours, up in the air, hundreds of launches and landings. So I'm quite experienced at it. And And
Well, you know, that's how my parents met. My parents, just for a bit of background, they met in the airline. They worked for British Airways, which was called British Caledonian back in the 70s.
yeah,
And my mother was my father's boss. And when she fell pregnant with my sister in '82, she was born in '83. But when she fell pregnant in '82, my father, she recommended my father to be promoted to her position. Bear in mind, no one knew they were going out. It's complicated, but basically, he would call her up while she was pregnant and ask. He would ask her questions about how to do her job or to do his job, and I thought it was quite a funny
yeah,
little side thing
yeah.
back in the early '80s.
The cool thing about the hang gliding experience was that when I did take up training in the power planes, you do engine out drills, right? So boom, instructor just pulls back the power. He doesn't really shut off the engine, but pulls it back to idle, right? So you're essentially a glider, right?
Yeah.
And after we did these tests, he was blown away, because I'm like, okay, that there's a fence line, there's a hill, the sun's on it. We go over there and hug the hill because that extends, because the rising air extends our glide a little bit and so on. And he let me go with it so long once that I'm like, and then I line up on the field. We're only like a couple hundred feet off the field. I said, I'll set it down if you want me to. He's like, no, that's okay. Right. So
Tell me. Oh yeah, go on.
So he's like, wow, I learned a few things in that. Right. But that's just experience from going and having to pick out a place to land, because you don't have an engine. You only get one shot at it. Right.
When you're hang gliding, do you have any, this is probably a very rookie question, but do you have any inkling as to convection currents, or is it just sort of
absolutely
in this generic land pattern? You've got these hills, you've got rolling hills, and in this generic land pattern, when you go up and down the hills, there will be convection currents always in this way, or is it actually this particular part of California is always this way? Or how does that work?
All over the world, and so the topography. You have topography in terms of the land, and then you have instructions in terms of like, large rocks, buildings, and trees. And so you have the convection, which is thermals, right? People,
Yeah.
it's not, so think of a pot when you boil it and you get these little bubbles and then they start breaking off, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what thermals are. It's not like a solid column. So you have to, but you can usually find the strongest part of it, right? And the bubbles expand as they get higher, right? So the higher you get, the easier it is to stay within a thermal. So that's the convection part of it. That's all over the world. If the sun is rising. Now, when you see cumulus clouds, the cotton balls in the air, that's
the high ones, yeah.
That's where the bubble, gets to the dew point essentially, and then it forms a cloud. So you can actually, when you're flying cross country, you can connect the dots. You see, okay, there's rising air there, and you go from one to the other. And if you're in a competition, so you have to, the strategy in a competition, so it's the minimum amount of time for the pilots to get from point A to point B. And most of the top world competitions, the tasks are usually at least 100 kilometers or more each task, right? But the thing is a strategy to it, because some thermals are stronger than others, right? So like a thermal that's going up at 150 feet per second. So that's a pretty weak thermal, right? So even if you catch it, you might say, I bet you that one's stronger. The cloud is bigger. So
you're constantly hedging. You're constantly saying, "Listen, I'm going to go that way."
Because when you're climbing, you're not going forward in the task, right? So you want to minimize the amount of time for the benefit in altitude gain that you get, so that you can go fast on glide towards the goal, right? Okay, so that covers all the convection part of it. Now there's what we call mechanical turbulence, which is in play when you have a prevailing wind. So, and those are called, we call them rotors. In fact, I had a dog. We were very active, flying all the time, and we had this little rat terrier dog, and Beatrice had asked me, well, what should we name it? I said, Rotor. So that was his name.
Was Rotor a little fucker? What was he like?
Then we had another dog, and she says, what do you want to name it? And I said, we call, cumulus clouds, right? So in the hang gliding world, we call them cumies, right? Okay, so that was our second dog. So we had Rotor and Cumi, right? So,
can you spell Cumi like a cumulus, like CIMU?
Yeah, like cumulus, but we just cut it off. So CUMIE, Cumi. Right.
Oh, random thing, by the way. I'm going to get. It's not that topical, but I'm getting my dad a dog. His birthday's February the 3rd, and he's mid-60s, and he's slowing down a bit, and he grew up with Labradors, and his wife, my stepmom, she's got a little rat, not a rat terrier, a little rat dog, like a Chihuahua. No, not a Chihuahua. Sorry, is it a Shih Tzu? It's a Shih Tzu, but it's me and my dad say you get it, and you could drop kick it at least 10 meters. Yeah. And we say, listen, if you can drop kick the dog, it's not a dog. It's a joke. So I'm going to get him a lab for his birthday, or I'm going to get him an offshoot of something like that. And I've just been talking about that with her today. I messaged my stepmom, who I don't get on with very well, and she was sorry, nearly finished. She was making all of these excuses because she likes tiny dogs, and my dad likes big dogs, and she's got a tiny dog. So I basically said, I was doing the whole being a good stepson. I was saying, listen, Martine, would you mind if I got my dad a dog? Obviously, you live with him. It's partly your responsibility. You guys got a house in France, all of these things. And her response, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Just give me a second. It's basically saying, she goes, lots to think about, but a smaller dog might be more practical. She's just absolutely like biased to the hilt. She's like everything, trying to sell me on buying. I'm like, we're not getting him another rat. We're getting him a proper dog.
Well,
anyway, sorry, go on.
I grew up with black labs, right? And I love them.
Yeah.
Great dogs, but I tell
Gun
you,
dogs, yeah.
I just really adore the ratting terriers, the American rat terriers. It's very similar to the fox terrier or Manchester terrier, what they call over there, right? Fox terriers and rat terriers are extremely similar. In fact, sometimes you can't tell them apart because of the markings. Up from there, the ones I really like are the Australian sheep herder dogs. Because that's a medium-sized dog. So you're talking about the rat terriers, 15 to 20 pounds. And then
what's their life expectancy approximately? What's their range life expectancy? 14 to 16 years, or
16 and pushing it to 18 sometimes. Right?
How old are your three? Is it 2 or 3? You've got 3, I think, isn't it?
Well, yeah, 3. So 2 of them are about 15, 16, but in great health. We recently had a scare with the female. Her name is her official name is Nanuka, but I call her Nuke. So so we have Nuke, Chancho, and Scout is the youngest one. So the male and female, they're about 15ish, I believe. And then the other guy, we don't really know how old he is, but probably 16. Well, he was Nanuka was the one we got from a breeder, right? So we know exactly on her. The other 2 are rescue dogs. So but we know Chancho is he was basically given to a rescue center by the owners because they were getting old and stuff and whatever, and him and his brother. And so, but the other one was found half dead in a field, so we have no idea with.
Well, Richard, I've got a weird thing that I thought about any of the other days. It interests me a lot. It might not be that fascinating for the audience, but we'll see. Is I've realized I'm kind of the namer of things. This is a let's call it labeling. I label myself, so it might become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But ever since I was a kid, I was always the one in the group of friends who gave people nicknames. I named what we were doing. I don't know. I was always that guy. I've never had a nickname. No one's ever called me a nickname. Always Andy or Andrew. I've never had a nickname in my entire life from anyone ever for a second. I don't know what it is. It's very strange. And I could tell you a lot of stories about that, but I'll just say about the dog, which is my stepmom had a dog called Gigi. And there's a film, a 60s film, a late 60s
Yeah.
film with Gigi, and yeah, you know the famous film. And so they got this little shit, Sue. They should have called it Sue. No, but they got the shit, and they called it Gaston because Gaston is the name of in the film Gigi. Gaston is the male name. Anyway, I'm a big tennis fan, and there's a tennis player called Benoit Paire, French player, and he's got an unbelievable backhand. I've got to think. This is coming to a point. He's got an unbelievable backhand, probably the best in the world, better than Djokovic or Nadal. And his name's Benoit Paire. And my father's lab's name as a kid was Ben. And so I was just thinking, okay. And for some reason I put it together. I said, okay, I'm going to get my dad a Labrador. I'm going to turn up at his house on his birthday with my sister and I'm going to package. I hope he doesn't watch this video. I'm going to package up dog food, a whole load of dog food inside a wrap up dog food, right? Because when he was about 40, he gave his dad a lump of coal for Christmas, and I thought what I'd do is I'd get him a big pack of dog food and take the piss. So my sister and I'll ring on the doorbell, February 3rd, 8:00 in the morning, say, right, Pa, we've got you some ingredients for some breakfast. We're going to cook you some breakfast. And I say, here's your present. So he's going to go in. This is my vision. He's going to go in and he's going to unwrap it all, and it's going to be a huge pack of dog food. And he's going to laugh and he's going to say, oh, that was really funny. And then 10, 20 minutes later, well, in the middle of breakfast, we're going to bring the Labrador, which is going to be called Benoit. So the reason why it's going to be called Benoit is from Ben, and it's a French name, which goes with the thing of Gigi and Gaston. It's going to be Benoit, Benoit. And I think it's just such a great name. Anyway, what do you think of that, Sonny Jim?
Silly story. Yeah.
Well, that's what you get from me. I mean, that's what you get from me when I haven't been, you know.
So okay. We started this off like talking about our little micro dispute about comedy.
This is what we do, guys. This is what me and Richard talk about when we're not filming. I completely forgot for about an hour that we were filming. So anyway, yeah go on, Richard.
So we should wrap it up. But now we have to talk about politics because you're like, politics.
Oh, go on. Okay,
I'm going to ignore Trump and blah, 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 blah. So, all right, explain yourself.
Okay. So I pride myself on being open, very open-minded. And I say the best way to describe me is, in a few words, is I'm interested in everything. It just covers so much about me. And I love to challenge the views of myself. So if I think I like certain things, I'll do the opposite. If I don't like certain things, I'll do them. I always try and, push limits. So if I'm this guy who's so open-minded and so interested in everything, and I love it and it's great, la-di-da, but can there be something that I can experiment with for a year or two that I literally eschew, E-S-C-H-E-W, eschew, I push away. I say, I don't want this in my life. And I thought, I'm just too damn interested in everything to eschew. And I thought, you know what? What's the most despicable, horrible, nasty, boring, what makes me like sick to the stomach? And I thought, politicians, the only group of people worse than pedophiles, worse than I can't think of a group of people that I find more despicably disgusting than politicians. Personally, it's a bias. And I thought, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend 2009. This is, a year ago. I said I'm going to spend 2019 and 2020, 24 months, eschewing the Prime Minister of England, whoever he or she may be, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, la-di-da, and the President of America, which happens to be Donald Trump. So I go through each day trying to avoid hearing Trump and anyway, that's the spiel. So having spent now 11 or so months not having watched or heard or known anything about Trump, honestly, I read the word Trump and I stop reading and I close the page down every single time. So school me.
Well, no, I'm not schooling you. I just wanted to know, or I didn't raise this with the intention of schooling you. I was just kind of curious about it because you're such an inquisitive dude. I was wondering, and you do work very hard to like keep your biases bridled, right? Everybody's
That's a good word.
Yeah, bridled. Keep your biases bridled. You can't eliminate them. Everybody has.
Do you know what I'm doing? Do you know what I'm doing? I'm quoting you on my phone. By the way, we can't finish until I told you I'd finish this bottle. I've only had half a bottle. Goddamn. Wait a second. What was that? Keep your biases bridled. Carry on talking. I'm just writing it down.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, bridled. I've never used that before, but it just came to because I've often talked about like I don't know. I think I was talking maybe with you or with Yasuhiko, who's going to be on the program, a Japanese philosopher. But I often use, unbridled deconstruction or
Yep,
unbridled
yep, yep.
reduction, where
Mm.
someone
Like,
just goes hog wild, and it loses all meaning because it's disintegration rather than integrating everything that you honestly can to construct is to integrate, right? And you're trying to integrate everything that that you deem as honestly relevant to the construction. So that's why that just popped up. But
I've got to make a comment on Yasuhiko, just because I have an interesting awe reflex. I think something about looking at yourself in the world is look at, Jordan Peterson says, watch your resentment.
uh-huh.
When you find yourself in a conversation with someone, you start resenting them. Don't go off the fly off the handles. Just think, oh, just almost like you're a third person. I'm resenting this, and it teaches you about yourself. Or what are you disgusted with? And for me, it's awe. I find Rafa Nadal, when I watch him play tennis, I'm in awe. I just think, how the, and when I watched that Yasuhiko video, that 8 minutes that I keep sharing with so many people, I was in awe.
Omnicentric.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why was it, because I feel like, I know it's a bit arrogant. I feel like I understand it in a level that is, I probably understand it levels below him because it's his construction. But when someone watches it, I've watched it with about 15 people now. I've watched it with a lot of people, actually sat there and they look at it and think, oh, that's interesting. And they kind of go, that's nice. And I think, God, how can you not want to talk about that video for the next 4 hours? And
I know.
let me just go on about this for a second. Let me just say, so I've spent years building up this. As you say, we have lots of ideas and we whittle them down. We winnow them. We get rid of them until we're left with the best. And so I've winnowed all these crazy ideas, these frames, all this into this idea of human beings frame things. We have aims and we have values. And this is the spiel. And I talk about it. I've talked about it many times. And I spend thousands of words. That I spent hours talking about it. And I'm quite like prolix about it. I go on about it. And I think I've got to a point where I've really got to grips with most of what I mean. And I've had a lot of feedback and a lot of criticism that's helped strengthen my arguments. And then I go and deliver a 2-hour talk with, discussion with someone. And I think, sheepdog at 1 hour, 24 minutes, 1 hour, 30 minutes, whatever, sheepdog 10.
Yeah.
And I watched the video. I thought, God, that's really good. And then I watched this 8-minute omnicentric video by Yasuhiko. And I'm like, I think he covered every single point I covered in an hour and a half in 8 minutes.
8 minutes. And then,
I mean, the fucker, and we're going to get him on here, and he's going to blow us away again. And if none of you are interested, you can go and enjoy yourselves elsewhere. That's what I say.
Enjoy yourself. Okay, so, but I saw that some years ago, and of course I've been familiar with him since like 1992, right? And I started corresponding with him in about 2006, 2007 or so. So, and he's a crazy, brilliant guy, such an etymologist and a logophile. And he blows me away because Japanese is his first language. And that's quite a gulf. But, it's not like someone who Spanish is their first language and they speak English or French and English and blah, 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 blah. This is quite a gulf between Japanese and English, and yet his command of the etymology of words
wouldn't it be funny if we never had him on? Wouldn't it be? It's kind of like so I had a friend, Johnny, who was my best friend for years, and we've fallen out, but we walked in and we used to play pool in a pub called the King of Denmark, and there was a song that would come on it goes, "'Cause You're Not Here." It's probably a famous tune. It goes, "'Cause you're not here." And I used to joke with him. I said, "Johnny, you don't exist. You're a figment of my imagination." And he started to believe in this sort of thing. He was like, "I am a figment of your imagination." It was a joke between us. And I was thinking about our series. Almost every discussions we have, we talk about Yasuhiko, but we never have him on. And it's just kind of funny. Are we ever going to have him on?
Yeah. No, he said no, but we should, who knows? Maybe it's because we're getting into the holiday season here, so it might not be till the first of the year, but we'll definitely do it. Okay, so let's wrap this up ourselves.
Absolutely.
I sure hope the gas station liquor store is open, because that's where I'm headed as soon as close
Well,
this.
I got through half a bottle. I mean, that's not really acceptable. You know, can you just tell me a quick story so I can get through it? But okay, I'll tell you what, I will leave with one story. You tell me something, and then I will tell you a story that is 100% true. And I shouldn't tell it, right? This is the rules of the game, right? The rules of the
I got
game
a story
are
for you. I got a story for you.
perfect. It's got to be absolutely true, but it's got to be kind of fairly out there.
Yeah. So there was this country, and like, yeah, it's going to be a crappy story, but serious? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this country, and it's an island nation, and a few years but they had this alliance with the continent, neighboring continent. There's water like about 25 miles that separates these countries, and they had this weird ass alliance, with this union, with this continent, neighboring continent. And it came to pass a few years back, that they held a referendum and said, you know what, we want to fire this union, or we want to get out of it. And everybody, well, not everybody, but the vote was in favor of those who wanted to end this union. And so, you know, it purports to be a democratic country, and yet,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what this was more of a referendum, a direct democracy, rather than happening in the representative way, through
Mm-hmm.
the representatives that the people elect. So it was a direct democracy move.
Mm-hmm.
And here, 3 years, what is it, 4 years later, um, they can't seem to get it done, you know, which really flies in the face of democracy. What do you think about that story, Andy? Is it true or not?
Well, I couldn't tell you that, but I'll tell you something. So pull yourself into the world of silly high-end schools in England, Eton College. Everyone's heard of it. And imagine you're a 13-year-old. Imagine you're a young. Actually, I was probably 12. Sorry, not I. This person was about 12, and he's entered this very, very traditional school. And when you get in trouble in this school, you get called in front of the headmaster. Or if you're in the bottom 2 years, in front of the lower masters, what it's called. And the top 3 years, you get hauled up in front of the headmaster. And it's called the bill. And you're going to be sitting in English class, and the prefect in the top year will knock on the door and go, Smith or Nikoley, you're to see the headmaster or the lower master at 12:30 in his chambers. You're on the bill. And everyone goes, way, you know, it's one of those things. And you get the pink slip, and at 12:25, you go and walk. You go in your tail suit and your penguin outfit, and you go and see the headmaster. He gives you detention, or he gives you chores, or he gives you, let's see, detention, chores, a fine, rustication, suspension, expulsion, or, you know, there are all sorts of intermediary things. Anyway, I go into my Latin teacher's an arse. He's called Mr. Goodhue, and he used to joke with us. In every class, he'd do the same jokes, and you could tell he'd been doing them for years. So he'd go, let's choose someone different. Nikoley, you're different. And then, you know, the next class, you go, let's choose someone different. Smith, you're different. And after 3 or 4 classes, I was like, I've had enough of this. So he said, let's choose someone different. And I said, Goodhue, you're different. And he said, Curzon, get out. And anyway, we started this big argument with each other. And then, so one day he set us a Latin test, and he said, this is a very hard test. He asked us to learn a complicated set of grammatical, I was in the top Latin set, so it was sort of quite tough. Complicated set of Latin grammatical things, and I just cheated because I was just pissed off. I didn't like him, so I got a cheat sheet. I put it between my legs, and I got full marks in the test. So he got them, and I said, "Oh, Curzon, well done! You got 20 out of 20." He said, "Brilliant." So pecunia, what does that mean? Whatever it was, and it means money. And I was like, I'd wrap the cheat sheet up and put it in my pocket. I didn't know the answers. I hadn't learned the cheat sheet, obviously. Otherwise, so I was like. I'm not sure I quite remember, sir. And he goes, right, well, question 2, Curzon. And I said, I'm going to have to pass, sir. Anyway, long story short, he put me on the bill. He said, I was on the bill for cheating, which I completely put my hand up to. And anyway, I go to the bill, and I meet this guy called, it's a 3-minute story, so give me a sec. I go and meet a guy called Khaled Akhtar. I shouldn't really be saying his surname, but I will. Like the son of an oil very wealthy family. He's a naughty little bastard. And we meet outside, and we are just the naughtiest fuckers in the world. And we chat. And then the headmaster comes, and what we notice is, in between the juniors going on the bill, you've got to stay with me, seeing the lower master at, I think it's 12 o'clock. And then at 12:30, the senior three are seeing the headmaster. They bring the bill book, this huge, from the mid 15th century book. Every single person in the history of Eton who's ever been in trouble. We're talking David Cameron, the princes. We're talking King Ladidar of Ladidar. Everyone who's ever been, the Sultan of Brunei's nephew is in this huge book. And I said, Khaled, or no, I didn't say. One of us said, I can't remember, we sort of forged it ourselves. We said, and I think we looked at each other, this sort of cheeky look of, and we built this plan. I think I got detention and he got chores or whatever it was. And we said, I tell you what, next Friday, we're both going to get on the bill. And we're going to steal the bill book. And we're going to sell it story by story to the papers, and we're going to make millions. And this is, I'm 12 years old at the time. This Khaled, okay, you got to bear in mind, Khaled's like got a full-on beard. He's 13 years old. He's like gone through puberty too. He speaks like this, and he's a joker, but he's absolutely like, I don't know. He's a lunatic. So we devised this plan. God, I shouldn't be saying this, but I will. So why not? You only live once. And we worked out the logistics of the headmaster's chambers compared to the lower master's chambers, which the lower master's chambers was downstairs. Mm-hmm. You walk up a spiral staircase, out of the lower master's, up a spiral staircase to the headmaster's chambers. And the door with which, the door to the room with which it was in, you come through the front. There's actually a back door. And that back door goes into college, which is where the scholars, I was in, the scholars are in college. And I was like, So when we weren't having the bill, I found out where that door led to, and how you could get through to that door from the side. This is very like central Eton. It's a very famous place. It's where I won't go into it. So I said, Khaled, one of us has to be the distractor and one of us has to be the thief. Uh-huh. And he was intent on being the thief. And I said, fine, okay, you do this, fine, okay, whatever. So we devised it. Everything was gorgeous. I honestly can't remember right now what I did. I did some sort of silly thing. Got on the bill. He got on the bill. We didn't have phones at this time because it was the late 90s, early 2000s. And we got on the bill, and as we were actually seeing the lower master because we were in the first year of 5. So we got on the bill, and we actually, instead of going back to our house or our classes, we waited until until 12:28, 12:29, when the head boy would take the bill book, this giant heavy book, up from the lower masters to the headmasters, up that spiral staircase I told you about. Uh-huh. And as he did that, Khaled went round the back, through college, up through a complicated catacomb of things, which I won't go into. And he comes to the back door, and the head boy does the same thing every time. He puts the bill book in the room, walks out of the room, stands outside. The door is now closed. This headmaster's chambers is closed from the back and the front. And all of the boys and the seniors are in the front. And I stood with them. And Khaled has gone through the back, stolen the bill book, picked it up, gone back out of the back door, gone through college, and he's come back around the side. And I'm basically scouting. I'm the watch, as it were. So then I walk down this spiral staircase down to outside the lower master's chambers. If you're with me, you might need to watch this a couple of times. And then I stand there, and I'm basically trying to protect. I'm the lookout man. And the headmaster comes around the corner, and he sees me. I've been on the bill before, so he knows who I am. And I made a slight error here, which ended up being a little bit more slight error. As I do this, Khaled comes running through. Imagine this huge 10 kilogram, I don't know, I never carried it, but 10 kilogram book, this huge book. He's carrying it through like this. And he's running like a child, like laughing. He's squealing like a pig. 13-year-old kid. And the headmaster, because obviously my attention is towards Khaled. And I look at him, and he's running across me, and the headmaster sees him. We're split seconds away. His cousin is in a car outside on the road. His cousin's plan to take this and take it home. And the plan, as I said, was to sell the stories one by one to papers for the next 10 years and make a huge amount of money. It would have worked. Anyway, the headmaster sees him and stops him and says, name and house, which is a standard thing at Eton. The teacher says to the boy, name and house. What's your name? What house are you in? Yeah. And he says, Akhtar JMN. And Khaled was busted. He got caught for stealing the billboard, and I think he got rusticated, which means suspended, and he never dobbed me in. And we failed. Every single word of that is true. As far as I remember the details. His cousin was annoyed. We failed it. I've got about 10 stories like that because I was not expelled at Eton, and for good reason. And I think each discussions I should offer you one more of these stories. And so I thought I would begin with that one. And
I know which one I'm going to tell next time. So how I almost got kicked out of Tennessee Temple University my first year of school. All right, so we're gonna stop the recording here.
Excellent.
Now I don't know how if anyone else will be interested in everything that we say. Maybe a few things here or there, but it was kind of fun. A good kind of Thanksgiving Day diversion for me. So with that, I'm going to bid you farewell.
See you next time, kids.
Yeah.
We're hopefully with Yasuhiko, and he does exist.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. Okay. Stay with me, Andy. All right.